Coming to you guys from Pennsylvania, where our headquarters are, and we're super excited to be here with you guys today to introduce the E-M1x. It's a really exciting time for us as a company, as this year we're celebrating our 100th year as a company for all of the imaging divisions, and the E-M1x is kind of the culmination within the camera division of all of the work and the technological evolutions that we've seen over the last 100 years. So I'm going to walk you guys through a couple of videos. We're going to talk with Aki a little bit about what went into the development of the products, and then you guys are going to be able to test out the product today and then ask us any questions you have. So we will get started. So that video is a great way, without me having to walk you through chronologically the last 100 years, how Olympus has really always maintained their core values. So optics have always been at the center of our company, whether that be medical devices, scientific devices, and the imaging devices that we see today with the cameras. So it's a great way to show you kind of how we got here and where the E-M1x is in a culmination of us for a company, and we're really just kind of excited to walk you through a little bit more about what went into the development of that. So I will invite Aki up here to talk a little bit more about those.
Very well, warm welcome from my side. My name is Aki, and I'm responsible for sales and marketing for North America. I'm also coming from Pennsylvania, USA, and I'm really excited to have you guys in here and to have opportunity to talk with you guys, because we are staying in the office, very usually, right? And we don't have, enough opportunity to listen to your voices, so it's a really great opportunity for us. Before we talk about our product, I'd like to talk about our development philosophy and how Olympus thinks about, our cameras a little bit. Since last 100 years, we have been developing many of the technologies, and as you can see, we have many of these world first technologies. And one of the great development we have done is Micro Four Thirds, we believe. In 2009, we have developed the first mirrorless cameras together with Panasonic. And since then, many of the new features, will be developed, have been developed with this Micro Four Thirds and mirrorless technologies. And today, at the very beginning, we had a problem with speed when we introduced EP1 first time, but now many of the professionals are using Micro Four Thirds. The biggest reasons why those people are using is size and weight. You don't need to sacrifice on the quality, but you can still get very small and lightweight cameras. But nowadays, I had interviews, meeting with press a lot, like DP Review, Imaging Resources, Engadget. There's always same questions. Do you make full frame? That's always same question since last photo keynote. And our very simple and clear answer is no, because it's not really interesting for us. And we don't think we should make a full frame cameras, because we believe Micro Four Thirds is one of the best solutions for most of the photographers. There are people who need full frame. If you go to really dark place, you may need bigger sensors. But on the other hand, there are many photographers who need small and lightweight and high-speed cameras. This is something we are going to focus on. And let me show one videos which shows our You saw the last comment from our chief engineer 48 years ago. that video is quite modern. It was developed last year, but this philosophy has been continued since 48 years ago. This person's name is Yoshihisa Maitani. He's not my father, but father of OMD. 48 years ago, he has made, this is kind of like booklet. He made notes. That was starting point of OMD. Olympus OMD stands for Olympus Maitani. It's name of the person. I don't know if you knew it. This is very rare for the Japanese company to use one person, one engineer's name for the product name. So he's kind of legendary engineer for us. And 48 years ago, he made these notes, like this thick, and he brought this note to our president. And he was saying, I want to develop this OM system. That was the first time, first starting point of OMD. And what he was saying with this memo, in his memo, was very simple. He was saying, we should develop a camera with compact and lightweight system with ultimate reliability. He was saying, that was in the last chapter of the video, and he was saying, if you don't, to take the pictures, the best camera is the camera you have at the moment. If you don't have a camera, you cannot make a shot, right? So to support this idea, we should make small and lightweight system which you can bring to anywhere. That was the philosophy, the first starting point of his point. And then second point is, he was saying is, ultimate reliability. What he meant in his memo was, it's not like no malfunction or it doesn't break or it's waterproof. It's not what he meant. It's important, but what he meant was you should be able to trust camera as your company. That was what he meant. And under this philosophy, we have developed the camera OM series or OMD series with compact and lightweight designs, and with super high resolution lenses and very strong image stabilization system. If you have good lenses, you can of course capture the pictures as you saw. That's reliable camera, right? And if you have image stabilization with powerful stabilization, even in harsh condition, you can still capture the sharp shot. This is what he meant in his word, ultimate reliability, and it's inherited in our current engineers. And that's why we focus on these 3 points. This is what we call core competence for this product. And we have new products today, E-M1x, and this is our 100 years anniversary. There are more to come. And recently we have introduced a new lens roadmap, which is this one. There's no details, but as you can see, there are many of the professional products, and there are good lenses for wildlife and bird photography, and there's many more, some more prime lenses coming. We cannot say when and price and how, but there are many lenses products. And if I go back to one slide, this image stabilization is evolved. As you may have seen it, but we have achieved 7.5 stop image stabilization. That's crazy, I would say. The other day, we have kind of competition with this image stabilization. And I used this E-M1x and 12-100 lens, and I took the shot with 4 seconds or 4.5 seconds, right? In shutter speed. And I got still sharp images. And I thought I'm good. And one of the journalists take the shot with 15 seconds, and the image is still sharp. That's really crazy. But this is something we really want to achieve. We want to have the perfect reliable camera for any of the conditions for you guys. And having said that, we have now introduced E-M1x, and I want to share some small story from R&D. This camera is developed together with professional photographers. Usually when we develop the cameras, it takes 2 years. 2 years, usually after we start planning the product, it will take 2 years, right? And after we finish the development, then usually we start selling the product, of course. But with these cameras, we took another 6 months to test it with our professional photographers, with many of them. For example, one of the examples is, maybe I can show one example with this guy. He's a famous professional photographer, sports photographers in Japan, photographer in Japan. Our engineer have spent maybe like 3 months with him all the time. And what they did is 2 things. One is just observing him like this. This is the guy, our R&D guy take the shot, this film. And when he observed him, our engineers, he has realized that how often he's changing the position, vertical and horizontal, right? And then with the cameras, it's not just Olympus, but with also other manufacturers, he have sometimes struggled to find the right button when they change the position. And by watching this, by observing him, they said we need to have exactly the same position on the vertical and horizontal side. So I would really encourage you to check with this product. You will find the buttons on exactly the same position, on the vertical and horizontal position. This is one thing. The other thing is he talked to this person, of course, and what he was saying, the first feedback after we finished development, he was saying, this is great camera. Autofocus is improved. Continuous autofocus is really improved. But he said, out of 20 shots, 1 or 2 shots, the focus is not on the uniform. He's taking sports photography, and he was saying, the focus is here, should be here for him, right? And then when he took 20 continuous shots, and 1 or 2 is just not here, but here, it's a very small thing. And but for him, it's not possible because this is his work. And our engineers have spent really a lot of time to change the algorithm to make sure focus is always here. So this is very small things, and you don't see it in our brochure because it's impossible to, mention numbers, right? But these things, this is how we, serious. This is proof that how seriously we take this camera, and we spent 6 months to work with those people. So that was just one example, but those are the people we have worked to test our cameras, and now finally we have our product. We are really excited to be able to share this product with you guys. That's the end of my presentation. Once again, thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate that you are with us and you have been using Olympus product. And it's important for all of us to have good deep connections with you guys. And if you have any questions, comments, feel free to talk to us, and we will do our best to answer to any of the questions you may have. So now then, Rothbard, yes, thank you very much. Enjoy.
Awesome. Thanks, Doc. So now we have another video that is brought to you by our visionary, Joe Edelman. So we know it's really important to not only hear from us at Olympus, but we are Olympus, we work for Olympus. We're gonna say, we believe it, but it's really important to hear that from a photographer directly. So without further ado, we will have Joe speak a little bit to the video, or to the product. So some pretty exciting stuff. I mean, for the size of the camera, it's got a ton of really fun features packed into it. Some that we saw with the E-M1x, or saw with the E-M1 Mark II, and now kind of some advancements that make the E-M1x unique. So Quet is going to walk you guys through a little bit more of the technology, as he is kind of our on-hand tech guy. So we will let him come on up. You don't want me to try to do that. So we'll let him take it over.
All right, so look, I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys, and I actually really like that we show that video first, because it means that I don't actually have to repeat any of the specs and all that sort of stuff again. But there's such a good story behind this particular product, how it was conceptualized, how it came to the market, and some of the, say for example, some of the divisions within the greater business that we actually consulted in the creation of this particular product, because we've done some things with this particular product that we haven't done before when it comes to a design of a camera. So one of the things that I just want to get out of the way first is that some people are asking me, is this your flagship camera? Well, going forward, well, technically it's not. okay? It's part of our EM1 series. The EM1 series is our flagship series, and you might ask, well, why aren't you calling this your flagship camera? Because, well, by having 2 flagship cameras at the top, you get choice as to what particular product you want. This is a great product. What this product isn't is small, all right? At the end of the day, the EM1 Mark II is actually going to be the better product for that. So if you need that portability, if you need that agility in a smaller package, the EM1 Mark II is actually a really, really good option. But if you're needing the ultimate, when it comes to, say, for example, motorsports, birding, wildlife photography, sports in general, the EM1X has the best technologies that we've ever produced in a camera to date. And you got a short glimpse of them in Joe's video just before. But I want to take things back just a step, because I want to talk about the actual construction of the camera itself. Now, Aki mentioned in his speech earlier that we do have 3 divisions in our business. And one of the really interesting things with this particular product is that when we created this product, we actually consulted one of our other business divisions in creation of this product. Does anybody want to take a guess as to which division we consulted in regards to the ergonomics of this particular camera?
Medical.
Yeah? All right, so we got it from this gentleman here. He just said medical division. This is the first time we've actually asked our medical division to consult on the design of a camera itself. And you might think to yourself, well, why would we ask our medical division to consult on the design of a camera? Well, one of the really important things for our medical division is that they make a lot of surgical tools. And one of the biggest challenges that they face when they create surgical tools is that when a doctor is operating on a patient, by the 7th, the 8th, the 9th hour, what tends to be the biggest issue for them is fatigue in their hand. Okay? So one of the really important things about our medical division is that they actually have a lot of expertise when it comes to actually mitigating this issue with fatigue in your hands. So the first thing that we did, we gave them one of the cameras, and we said to them, how do you think this feels? They looked at the camera and they held it, and they said, the first thing they said, in a short period of time, these 3 fingers are going to be the first 3 fingers that get really, really tired if you hold this camera for a long period of time. Right? Because what happens when you hold a camera with just one hand, the first thing that happens is that these 3 fingers tense around the grip. Right? And they said that's going to be where you're going to have the main cause of your fatigue. And what they did, they had a look at the camera and they said, well, in terms of the camera, look, it's not too different from how other camera manufacturers have made this camera, but what you could do is actually cut out this corner. All right? And we thought to ourselves, well, why would you actually do that? And they said, well, the reason why you would actually cut this corner out is because the thickest part of your palm on your left hand actually fits right into that groove. And by doing that, it actually transfers 50% of the weight onto the other hand, and the first thing you do is actually relax these 3 fingers. Right? And so the type of user that's going to be buying this particular camera, we're talking sports photographers, we're talking wedding photographers. If you've seen any of these guys work before, they are up at the crack of dawn and they keep working all day. They're doing 12-hour shifts. Fatigue is one of the biggest issues when it comes to the actual when it comes to the challenges that a photographer will have during the day. And we saw time and time again, because we're down at Daytona Speedway quite often, these guys carrying around these big, bulky cameras. And what we also tended to find was that they were always carrying around something like a monopod or a tripod with a gimbal attached to it as well. Whereas the really nice thing about our system, from a body point of view, we've created it to be as ergonomic as possible. But in terms of the size of our lenses as well, Aki mentioned earlier, we designed this whole system to be more lightweight and more portable. Because, look, you don't have to go too far back in history to see that almost every person that is using one of these sorts of cameras is using some sort of monopod or some sort of support. So if we take a step back to the Beijing Olympics, have a look at that. Everybody is using some form of monopod or tripod or something like that. And you would think that as technology improves, so would the size of cameras and lenses and all that sort of stuff. But if we go to Rio, not too much changed, okay? So, you know, that's one of the things that really makes Olympus as a company stand out from the rest of the market. We actually do produce an option which allows people, you know, not just an affordable super telephoto lens, but they also have the ability to be able to literally handhold a super telephoto lens combined, when you take into account that this is combined with what is the most powerful stabilizer on the market to date. So that's a really nice story as far as the construction of this particular camera is concerned. But we took it a step further, and Aki mentioned before when he was talking about that sports photographer that we took a lot of design into consideration, so that, say for example, each particular button has a unique feel to it. So you can see that the ISO button actually has dimples around that. And what's really important is that not only have we put these unique feels on each of the buttons in just your normal landscape orientation, they have the exact same feel when you're actually using the camera in the vertical grip as well. So what that means is that if somebody is taking photographs, they don't actually have to take their eye away from their viewfinder at any given time. They can find the button that they need to press because they can literally feel the unique feel of that particular button. So, you know, very small details makes what is a really, really wonderful camera to use, you know, for these sports shooters and wildlife shooters, things like that. Not only did we put just one joystick, but we actually put two joysticks in the camera as well. So you've got access to a multi-selected joystick, no matter if you're in portrait or landscape orientation with this camera also. Now, one of the other things that we did take into the design consideration of this particular product is that, like I said before, these guys that are going to be using this camera are going to be out in, you know, potentially out in daylight, out in the sun all day. So one of the things that tends to happen with black products is that they tend to get really quite warm in terms of heat. Right? And that's one thing that one does design consideration that we took into with this particular camera. We actually have a full exhaust system in this particular camera, which is attached to the processor as well as the sensor. And what that allows our camera to do is actually function at a more stable core temperature, even in high heat situations. But also it allows the camera to keep cooler if it's being pushed to its limit. So if you're shooting fast bursts consistently, you know, what tends to happen is that you're pushing your sensor harder, you know, your processor's in overdrive because it's trying to put everything over to the memory card. Your camera internally will get hot. The really important thing about this heat dissipation system is that that actually mitigates any of those issues. So a really, really nice addition as far as ultimate reliability is concerned, because at the end of the day, that sports photographer or that wedding photographer, you know, they're there to capture that split-second moment, you know, that toss of the bouquet or something like that. You don't really want to try and get the bride to do it again or anything like that. It takes away from, you know, the special scenario of that bouquet toss. And also, you know, say for example, a 100-meter dash, all right? You can't ask them to do the race again, right, if you miss the shot. It has to work the first time, every time. So this is one of the features that we put into this particular product to ensure that this camera will not fail a person that needs that split-second shot. Now, for people that like big viewfinders, you're going to like this. This is the biggest viewfinder that you can actually get on the market, period, as far as size of viewfinder is concerned. So, so that's pretty nice there. Now, one of the things that you did see in the video was that we talked about the weather sealing in this particular camera. So it's really simple. Any of like the E-M1 series cameras are weather sealed. Any of our Pro series lenses are weather sealed as well. So as long as you get one of the Pro series lenses and mount it on an E-M1x, an E-M1 Mark II, the camera is actually completely weather sealed. If you get caught in the rain, it's more likely you that will get out of the rain. The camera will keep shooting perfectly fine. So one of the things that's quite nice about this particular product is that the E-M1x is actually rated to IPX1. We're currently the only manufacturer that actually officially puts an IPX rating on weather sealed cameras, and you know, we stand by that. But you know, what's neat for us is that yes, we've stated that we have that this product is weather sealed to an IPX1 rating, but we've actually tested this a lot higher. So what you see right now is a test for IPX1. It's not that much water, right? Honestly, it's not that much water. You know, it just sort of pulls up a bit. So what we did, we actually tested it at a much higher level. This is IPX3, all right? So a couple of levels higher than IPX1, where we literally are just shooting water at it from all angles. You can see water pooling in this particular shot. Yeah, you can see the water literally pooling on the camera itself. This particular camera can take an absolute drenching, and it'll be completely fine. So really, really nice improvements as far as reliability is concerned there. So we made improvements to the external part of the camera. We've also made improvements to the internal part of the camera as well, starting with the dust reduction system. So we've actually improved the dust reduction system even further. If you've never seen this before, that's actually how violent the supersonic wave filter is when it literally kicks dust off your imaging sensor. Not only have we improved the supersonic wave filter, but we've also improved the coating that's on the glass filter as well, so that it's actually it only has 1/10 of the stickiness that it used to. So literally, dust can't actually adhere to that surface. You know, it's a really, really nice improvement there. A couple of other really nice improvements that we've made internally to the camera is that for the first time we've added a cartridge system into this particular camera. So it takes just two BLN1 batteries, which is the same battery that we use in the E-M1 Mark II. You can remove that individually, but the really nice thing with this particular camera as well is that this camera can actually charge your batteries as well. So one of the things that I often take around with me is a power bank that I use for my mobile phone and things like that. The nice thing is, if I'm using the correct cable, I can actually just plug it straight into this camera and it'll actually charge my camera as well. So, you know, the nice thing is that if I suddenly need like an emergency source of power, I have something that I can access really nice and easily, which is a really, really nice feature as well.
Will it run the camera too?
Okay, so all right, so see how there's a little asterisk here? All right, so the little asterisk actually says specific. There are certain specifications which will actually allow you to physically power the camera directly from a power bank, but they are very, very specific. Don't quote me on this right now, but it needs to be able to output at 3 amps at like 12 volts or something, like as a bare minimum, which as far as power banks are concerned is actually quite a high level of power. It's not the voltage that's the issue, it's the amperage which is the issue. You need to get a high enough amperage to be able to physically power the product itself. Having said that, we actually do make an AC adapter which you can power the camera as well. So there's two different ways that you could technically physically power the camera. All right, moving on from that, you saw before that it does have the same 121 point cross type autofocus array from the E-M1 Mark II. But one of the things that's a little bit unique is that we're actually still the only manufacturer on the market that utilizes a cross-type on-chip phase detection autofocusing sensor. Every other manufacturer still currently uses a single-line sensor when it comes to their on-chip phase detection autofocus. And if anybody did shoot with an SLR back in the day, a lot of people understood that there was a real benefit to having a cross-type autofocusing sensor, because it meant that you got accuracy no matter if you were shooting in a portrait or a landscape orientation. You had the cross-type sensor that would take care of that situation for you. But you've also got a few improvements in terms of your focus point selection as well. So you've got now a new 5x5 box choice that you can select from, but we've taken it a step further as well. If there is a particular type of genre or photography that you like to do, well, guess what? If you need a particular type of autofocus array, you can actually customize the camera to do that. So this is a really, really good example. I know a lot of birding photographers that do a lot of panning sort of shots as they follow birds as they fly around in the air. And what you can potentially do is create a situation where you have that autofocus array take the entire width of the array, but only have it at a certain height. These are just ways that you could potentially customize your autofocusing array, and it's a really, really nice feature that we've included in this particular camera, because you can literally customize the autofocusing system to the way that you actually shoot. So a really, really nice piece of technology there. All right, I've got a little bit of a pop quiz for you guys, because there's been some really, really good improvements made in the autofocusing system in this particular camera. All right. So if we're talking about one of the things that we mentioned earlier is that there's been really big improvements in the autofocusing algorithm. If we're talking about the E-M1 II, the first generation of that continual autofocus algorithm consisted of about 500,000 lines of code in terms of the actual brains of the continual autofocus algorithm. Does anybody want to have a guess as to how many lines of code we used for the continual autofocus algorithm with the E-M1x?
About 5 million.
5 million, that's a good guess. Does anybody else want to have a guess?
You mean you deep learning algorithm?
We're talking about just the whole thing, yeah.
What's
yeah.
it written in?
Sorry?
What language is it written in?
Oh, I don't know that. I just know the lines. I don't know enough about coding, to be perfectly honest. But that's a very, very good guess, sir. So in this particular, in the E-M1x, there's actually just over 6 million lines of code that's been written into this continual autofocusing algorithm. There has been some monumental improvements as far as the autofocusing algorithm is concerned. We've already got this camera into the hands of a number of sports photographers, and all of them said the same thing. When they started focusing with this camera, it felt like the camera just felt so sure of itself when it had actually locked onto a subject, and they were able to follow that subject all the way through. That was a very, very good answer, sir. So the great thing for you is that you get a limited edition Olympus sketchbook. Right? Right? Well done. All right. All right. So as part of this new autofocusing algorithm, one of the really nice things is that it now has the ability to recognize certain subjects. So these are the 3 subjects that it can recognize from day one. So what we're shipping with. And I can guarantee to you that as future firmware updates come out, we're going to be adding to the number of subjects that this camera will be able to detect as well. We've already got a lot of phone calls from the birding associations going, get birds into this straight away, that sort of stuff. So, we definitely have received a lot of excited feedback from people who see potential uses for this particular product. But the really important thing about this particular intelligent autofocusing system is that when it's actually looking at your camera, looking at your subject, it's not just working out the fact that it is a car. It's actually looking for what side of the car it's looking at as well. Now, if you think about that, well, why would it do that? Well, let's say, for example, you guys are the photographer and this car's coming straight at you. Okay? If the intelligent autofocusing system knows that it's looking at the front of your car, it knows that it suddenly can't move this way, it suddenly can't move that way. And what it does is it actually tweaks the predictive algorithm so that it actually cuts that out of the actual measurements that it actually calculates. And so what it's doing is actually making much better educated guesses as far as the predictive autofocusing algorithm is concerned. That's very, very clever. Very, very clever. And that's a technology that we actually haven't seen in any autofocusing algorithm up until this particular date. Now, I've talked about this in theory so far, or how did it go about in the real world? I was lucky enough to be at the Daytona 500 a few weeks ago, so down in Florida. Is it Florida? Yeah, down in Florida. Yeah, really, really nice down there. And this is the thing. My background in photography is not motorsports or anything like that. So I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was getting out there, and what I found was that I was able to continually replicate movements panning at slow shutter speeds And the camera was literally able to take care of everything else for me. So one of the things for me is I'm not very good at continually autofocusing with fast-moving subjects. These things are moving literally at 200 miles per hour. And I don't really know what I'm doing as a sports photographer. But the thing is, I didn't have to know what I was doing as a sports photographer. The camera actually knew what was going on. All I had to worry about was literally the framing. And it was something that I could repeat again and again and again. I was gobsmacked effectively by how effective this technology was. And if you do closer crops, what I was finding is that you were able to get unbelievable detail, even though I was panning at relatively slow shutter speeds here. You're talking about 1/200th of a second, which is why you're seeing this blur as we're panning here. But you can see that the amount of detail that it was picking up was unbelievable. If you've never seen one of the races before, they get really close to each other, and like this is at 200 miles per hour, like that. Unbelievable, very, very scary. But like I said before, this is just something that I was able to replicate again and again and again. It was uncanny. Here's another interesting piece of trivia. If you actually ever look at a NASCAR on television and you see, oh, look at all the grill and the lights and all that sort of stuff, that's actually one big sticker. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought they actually had lights and all that sort of stuff. The whole body is actually just one big sticker. I felt so cheated when I was looking at the cars. So those are the cars, all right? But during the day as well, they had like flyovers of the jets and things like that. And all I did was literally turn it over to the aeroplanes, and it picked it up straight away. And once again, I'm not an aerial photographer, or I don't go to air shows to take photos of these things. But the thing is, I didn't have to. The camera was doing all that for me. I literally needed to just kind of point it in the right direction, and it kind of took care of everything else, which is pretty stunning as far as technology is concerned. So the intelligent subject detection autofocus is literally next level. Like I haven't seen anything like it before. But not only that, the IS system got a boost as well. So with the 12-100, you can get up to 7.5 stops of stabilization. But this time around, it's not just your stills photographers that get an interesting piece of tech. Your videographers get a really, really good improvement in your video stabilization as well. And one of the things that sets this particular stabilizer apart from any other stabilizer on the market for video specifically is that this is the first product on the market which allows you to customize the behavior of the stabilizer specifically for video. If you need more stabilization, well, you can literally tell the camera to increase the amount of stabilization that it's providing in video. If you need it just to get it to step back a little bit, well, then you can turn that down as well. Up until now, for videographers, stabilization was literally an all or nothing situation. You either had it on or you didn't have it on at all, and you would watch those movies where people would be shaking all over the place, and then you'd end up feeling sick. All right? The great thing about this is that if you need to shoot something like a chase scene or something like that, where you need a little bit of movement to be in your shot for the narrative, well, you can just bump that stabilizer down so that it's not completely taking all the movement away, but it's creating just enough movement. It now comes down to the choice of the videographer as to how they want to tell their story. That's a really, really nice feature. I'm excited about that because I have some background in video, so I'm pretty excited about that particular feature myself. Now, going on from that, we also do have this handheld high-res shot. Now, one of the things that's a little bit different with the handheld high-res shot versus the tripod high-res shot, which is our traditional high-res shot that we've had in our cameras, is the amount of shots that are actually taken. All right? So with the tripod handheld high-res shot, the camera would take 8 photographs and compile that together. The handheld high-res shot actually takes 16. So it actually takes double the amount of shots that the tripod high-res shot took, but it's still able to spit out a 50 megapixel RAW. And what that means is that if you've got this sort of shot, you can do some pretty extreme crops, and you just won't lose any detail in doing that. So for guys that do a lot of product photography, or guys that do a lot of still life sort of work, this is a really, really neat feature for them, especially if they're going to be needing that high resolution. But going back to this picture here, you know, if you've ever traveled in Europe before, if you've ever gone to museums, churches, basilicas, all those sorts of things, one of the things that you're not allowed to do is set up a tripod, all right? And that's where your handheld high-res is going to come in really, really handy in those sorts of situations. So really, really nice improvement as far as technology is concerned there. Now moving on from that, this is a really, really nice feature. For those that always forget to bring their ND filter with them when they're doing landscape photography, this is a really nice feature. You can actually add up to the effect of an ND32, which is a 5-stop ND filter, and you'll actually see the effects come through your viewfinder as well. So you can actually tell how much flow is being created by the ND effect that you're using in your camera. So, so you get to visualize that, which is, live ND effectively is the next generation of live composite, which is one of our nice features that we had in our cameras beforehand. Really, really nice feature there. Now for me, one of the nice features that I particularly like, I work in the studio a lot, and so I tend to shoot tethered. The really nice thing for me is that the E-M1x is both Bluetooth and wireless AC compatible. And the really nice thing for me now is that I can actually tether wirelessly. So I can be shooting in the studio. I don't have to worry about the cable that's being plugged into my computer. I don't have to worry about anyone tripping over that cable because it will literally just transfer everything over.
And you can turn those features off, like completely off, just to save battery? Like
Yeah, so you actually you have to enable the tethering, yeah. So it's you literally have to turn it on to do that. But you know, the really neat thing about this camera is that you have the ability to wirelessly transfer. You know, that's one of the things that we did get asked by some of the pros. Is there a way to wirelessly transfer our files from, you know, our laptop to our computer so we can actually send it off to our client, you know, straight away? You know, just helping to improve workflows for the photographers that we work with as well. So a lot of these features that I've shown you here are features that are more stills photography related. But I want to show you the other part to this camera as well, because like I said before, that stabilizer is a great storytelling tool for a cinematographer. So that's what we did when we were getting this camera into the hands of, you know, of photographers to test this product out. We did give it to a cinematographer. We gave him some budget and said, hey, make us a movie trailer. Here's your stipulations: no tripods, no gimbals, no stabilizers or anything like that. Everything has to be handheld, and basically that's the only stipulation we're giving you. It has to be handheld, and this is what he came up with. So I'm just going to show you this video right now.
I'm in charge of your end of it. You guys could use one.
So, I'm sorry, do I get a vote?
He's your father.
He's not much of a father.
Alright, so yeah, some pretty hard-hitting stuff there. But one of the really important things about this particular, you know, this particular camera is that we've placed some features for the videographers that we haven't traditionally seen in our products before. So it's the first time we've ever put a log profile, a log gamma profile into this particular product. And for those that may not necessarily know what a log gamma profile is, it's a different way of changing where your dynamic range lies within your signal. And so what it tends to be is a much flatter signal than your standard video signal. So if this is your standard video signal here, what you can see in this particular shot here, sorry, let's go back to the standard shot, is that when you're taking a normal video, this is just the standard default profile that you'd find in any normal digital camera. In a standard profile, what you'll find is that you tend to lose a lot of detail in your highlights, and you also tend to lose a lot of detail in your darkest parts in your shot. Okay, what a log gamma allows you to do is literally flatten that image out, and by doing that, you can actually retain a lot more detail in your highlights and your shadows. Log gammas tend to be, you'll see the difference between a normal profile and a log gamma profile most in high contrast scenes, like in this particular scenario here, where you've got brightness outside, but then you've also got a less bright interior as well. The thing about a log gamma, which is very, very similar to, say, for example, like a RAW file, you have to process it. Okay, so there's an extra step of editing that needs to be done with a log gamma profile. But when you actually put it side by side after you actually do grade it, so that's it graded there, you can see that there's actually a pretty significant difference between your standard video profile and your log gamma profile there. That difference there is literally night and day. Like, all of that detail in your highlight area is completely destroyed, whereas you actually retain all of that highlight detail in a log gamma profile. So, you know, really, really nice feature specifically designed for videographers, which is pretty neat there. Now, on top of that, to help with the storytelling of this particular camera, is that it has the ability to also shoot at 120 frames per second in full HD. And what it means is that if you're shooting video, so this is a standard 1080p, this is down at the Daytona 500, you know, you can slow things down if you actually want to. You know, so stylistically, there's some nice options for the videographers, you know, should they want to do something like a little bit of slow motion or something like that. So yeah, some really, really good additions as far as the features found for videographers in the E-M1x as well. And that's something, like, for me, I feel like we haven't. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I drove from Saskatoon largely to talk about this point.
Sure.
I'm doing an increasing amount of video, and there are some real wonderful things this camera does. But why doesn't it have 10-bit video output? Why the 4K? I mainly shoot classical concerts now. My wife's a professional pianist, music prof. And also, for that, you need more than 24. 24 frames per second is great for a cinematic look.
Yep.
An athlete or any fast action, you want 30 or maybe even 60. The other thing, I was long a career counselor, and I know about a dozen professional photographers. These days, you don't have a video person and a stills person.
You have the same guy.
The same guy's got to do it all, and this is why, you know, Canon in their top camera has a very high. So I'm hoping that some of this can be addressed in firmware. It's a wonderful camera, but the other ones, like the GH5 and so on, do have the 10-bit.
Well, okay, I could answer that. I could answer that in a couple of different ways. All right. Now, like you said before, so the bit depth of this particular product is 8-bit currently, and one of the things that's really important about the log gamma that we've actually put into this particular product is that we actually haven't gone too aggressive with the actual gamma curve itself. All right, and that we've done that purposely because we're working within the confines of the 8-bit space. There's no point in putting a more aggressive curve if you can't actually assign values to it in regards to the bit depth itself. Having said that, what we've actually found is that talking with a number of guys, like say for example, Yane Amyane, who is the cinematographer that made that video just before, what he actually found was that as far as grading is concerned, he actually didn't find the issue of 8-bit to be a massive issue, provided that he wasn't trying to literally change colors. Okay, so like say for example, if you're trying to do keying where you're literally changing a green screen to something else, okay, you know, that's where you're going to find the advantage of something like a 10-bit signal. But if literally your grading is just to get the balance right in a shot where you're potentially just modifying the saturations and those sorts of things, what he actually found was that the actual file was actually quite malleable. So he actually didn't find it. What we're finding from quite a few of the cinematographers is they're not finding too many issues when it comes to grading, and because of the fact that the gamma curve is actually a little bit less aggressive than other gamma curves on the market, a lot of people have actually played with this vlog profile and have actually all said that it's actually a very easy gamma curve to grade as well. Keep in mind, there is going to be a LUT that will be available. I think it is available now already. So if grading is not your thing, well then there is a LUT already to to speed up that process for you. For myself, one of the things that I'm finding these days is that I honestly I've worked in this I've worked in the video industry before, so like we take it from capture all the way through to post. Unless you're doing some really drastic things to the signal itself, I don't find a lot of situations where you need that extra bit depth to actually pull the information that you actually need to do in terms of your grade. But that all comes down to the actual gamma curve itself. If I were to pick on a brand, there are certain log gamma curves out there which are actually too aggressive for an 8-bit signal, and what you tend to find is at the moment that you actually start grading those signals, literally the image falls apart because they just went too aggressive for their actual gamma curve. One of the things that has been said in reviews and have been said from people that have actually used the product is that they've said that as far as the gamma curve found in this particular product is concerned, for an 8-bit product, is probably the most responsible 8-bit gamma curve that they've had the ability to actually muck around with. Yeah.
Now, what about the frames per second, though? Because
in terms of the frames per second, I suppose one of the things...
I'm hoping it can be increased in future because you have the heat pipe, you have the capacity.
Sure. Look, I can't comment on anything that will come in the future or anything like that. But one of the things for us is a lot of the work that we do in terms of the people that we're working with at the moment and things like that tend to be the guys that stand on the narrative side of videography, and so they're the ones that tend to be shooting at 24, 25p in those sorts of frame rates. I know, like you mentioned, in the world of sports and stuff like that, it's nice to have those higher frame rates for those sorts of things. But having said that, traditionally, if you have a look at where Olympus has been in the past, we're very much a stills-orientated company. This is a great step in the right direction for us from a video side of things. And that's actually something that a lot of people have admitted when they've used the E-M1x from a video point of view. They're going, hey, obviously there's always room for improvement. I'll put my hand up and say there's always room for improvement. But as far as steps in the right direction are concerned, there's some really nice features that have been put into the E-M1x.
Okay, there's just a couple of other things. Like I'm using a Panasonic G85 here.
Sure.
Because it'll in 4K output a single file rather than a segmented file. It would seem that would be fairly easy to do. And then there's also the 30-minute limit, because any video gets segmented.
The file size itself is actually more to do with the actual literal file structure of the files itself. So the actual file structure maxes out at 4 gigabytes. Hence, you'll actually see that each individual file is truncated into a 4 gigabyte file. That's just part of the file format.
But why can Panasonic do it and Olympus use the other? Can't they change that?
Look, in terms of that, they have, I'll say it. As far as video is concerned, you might not remember the last Olympus video camera that was ever released, but Panasonic have been making video cameras for a very long time. So they have a suite of codecs at their disposal, effectively. We try to get a hold of the best and most efficient codec that we can get at any given time. Obviously, there are licensing fees and those sorts of things that we have to take into account as well. That's hopefully something that we can address in the future. And we'll continue to explore those options as time goes by. Sure. Sorry, sir. I know.
Does this camera have computational ability to go to 30 and 60 frames?
I honestly can't answer that for you. You'd need one of the Olympus engineers to answer that particular one. I'd like to think that it does, but I can't honestly give you that real answer, unfortunately.
And of course, the limit's only there for 4K video, or the Cine video, right?
In regards to
FPS.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you know, you can, you know, like I showed before, you can shoot at 120 frames per second in full HD, in terms of maximum frames per second. Well, anyway, we got to the question section before I actually got to the question slide. So hey, let's have at it. Does anybody have any questions?
Can you tell me why the resolution of the electronic viewfinder stay at where it is?
That's an excellent question, actually. So,
because it's one of the disappointments when it first
okay,
came out, and I wish it can be matching with the GX5 or something better.
Sorry, what's your name, sir?
Dennis.
Dennis, thank you for your question. That is an excellent question. Okay, so the question from Dennis was, why didn't we put a higher resolution viewfinder into the E-M1x? Now, I'll be the first person to admit, it's not the highest resolution viewfinder that you can currently get on the market. So it's using a 2.4 million dot viewfinder in there. One of the really important things when we actually were creating this particular product was, so I haven't tried to hide it in terms of who we're targeting with this particular product. We're targeting sports photographers, we're talking about wildlife photographers, birds. All of those things are fast moving objects, right? Yeah. So the thing that we're going to be photographing is moving fast, it's flying fast, it's doing all of those sorts of things. Now, one of the things that we found out when we were actually testing a number of different viewfinders on the market, because I can guarantee to you that we were contemplating putting a higher resolution viewfinder into this particular product when we were thinking, which viewfinder are we going to put in this particular product. And one of the things that we noticed straight away was that every viewfinder on the market that had a higher resolution than 2.4 million dots displayed that viewfinder in an interlaced format. Okay, so what that means is that you're actually seeing two separate pictures being created through your viewfinder. There's literally a line, like there's literally resolution for line 1, line 3, line 5, line 7, and there's a completely different picture showing at line 2, line 4, line 6, line 8. And the whole idea behind that is that they're supposed to refresh so quickly that you can't notice the difference, that you're actually looking at two separate pictures. Okay? Now, like I said before, every viewfinder on the market that was higher resolution than 2.4 million dots displayed it in an interlaced format, which doesn't sound like much until you try and start panning across from a subject, because what happens is if there's a subject that's running really, really fast and you're trying to follow them and you're using an interlaced viewfinder, those two images start separating, okay? We call it tearing in terms of the viewfinder itself. What we actually found as far as feedback was concerned was that the sports photographers just found that too distracting. They literally couldn't follow the subject because they were literally looking at two separate pictures as they were trying to pan all that way through. Don't get me wrong, if we could have got a progressive output viewfinder, we would have put a higher resolution progressive viewfinder in this particular camera. But up until this point, technologically, there is no viewfinder on the market at a higher resolution that displays in a progressive format. And this is the product that we released that was going to be marketed at all those guys that are going to be shooting really fast moving subjects. All right? So it was almost a bit of a clash of ideals. We would love to put a high resolution viewfinder into that, but not at the expense of the user experience, not at the expense of the professional photographer's experience when it came to actually following a fast-moving subject or something like that. Does that make sense to you, Dennis?
Yeah.
It's actually one of the biggest reasons. Trust me, I would have loved to seen a higher resolution viewfinder. I'd be the first person to put my hand up to say that I would have loved to see a higher resolution viewfinder. But upon current technology, we're not at a point yet where those viewfinders with higher resolutions can actually output in a progressive format. Maybe next generation, who knows? Thanks.
So what is the renewal cycle going to be on these kind of cameras? 3-4 years, or?
Once again, that is That is a question that is way above my pay grade, dude. like I honestly don't know enough about that, like future life cycles and that sort of stuff, unfortunately. But you know, one of the really important things for us, like I'll answer this question in a really different way. Did anybody own the original EM1? Yeah, quite a few. Awesome. All right. So the really nice thing about the EM1 is that, you know, we literally released 4 firmware updates, which actually gave a new lease of life on those particular products. I can guarantee to you that that ideal hasn't changed with this particular product. Yeah, the nice thing for us is if you're going to be buying, like, and this, keep in mind, this product is brand new, right? You're going to get the support from Olympus as time goes on. I've already promised to you guys that as future firmware updates, you're going to see improvements to the intelligent autofocusing system. You know, as more updates come out, I can guarantee to you that there are engineers that are already working out, you know, what we can do with this, with the next firmware update for this particular product.
How come we haven't seen a major upgrade yet on the EM1x?
Well, that's an awesome question, man. Just you wait.
That's as much as waited for a long time.
Yeah. So, well, you waited this long.
You see,
Be strong.
EM1, you know, we've had a number of them, but the 2, would it be limitation of computational power because there's only one processor?
Yeah. Look, put it this way. Like, well, I have talked to some of the engineers in Tokyo, and look, they've said, look, there are things that we can, you know, port over to the EM1 Mark II, but there are definitely things that we can't because of what you've just mentioned there, the fact that there isn't just the raw processing power of what the EM1x actually has. I think. Yeah, like in the conversations that they have, they said, look, we've got an idea of what can be ported over, what can't be ported over, and they said, look, we're going to try as hard as possible to port over the things that we can. Like one of the simple things for me, the new system to actually customize your own menu system in this is awesome. It's really simple to do as well. It's actually probably one of the best implementations I've seen from any manufacturer to set up your own custom menu. I'd love to see that taken over to, you know, the EM1 Mark II, and to be honest,
shouldn't be too hard to do.
Yeah, exactly right. Baby steps first, right?
Question on the e-shutter. I mean, I found really quite pleasing to use the EM1 Mark II with the Pro Cap, and the rolling shutter speed is actually pretty quick.
It's quite manageable, yeah, definitely.
It's decent.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't measured it, but it seems to be maybe like 1/60th of a second readout speed or something. Do you know what the readout speed is with the EM1x?
No, I don't know off the top of my head. Sorry.
Do you know if it's improved over the EM1 Mark II?
In terms of the sensor itself, I dare say that they probably share some similarities. If it was faster, like, it wouldn't be faster by much. It definitely wouldn't be slower, put it that way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Got a 20.3 megapixel sensor.
Yeah.
Is that as much as we're going to see in Micro Four Thirds?
That's as much as we're going to see for now, up until, I don't know, whenever the next high resolution viewfinder comes out. Look, I'd love to see a higher resolution viewfinder come out, but like, I mean, not viewfinder, sensor come out. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I suppose one of the things that, you know, and this is something that our engineers do say, there's always that, you know, you always need to have that balance between resolution versus image quality, and you know, especially with sensors, there is a point where you can get to a point of diminishing returns, where if you increase the actual the actual resolution of a sensor, you might actually compromise your dynamic range, your sensitivity, those sorts of things. So that's something that they always have to balance when they're looking, you know, at potentially developing a new sensor at all. You know, we definitely know that there are people that have asked, you know, for higher resolution sensors, and you know, I can guarantee to you that they are trying their best to see if that could potentially be fulfilled. You know, at this present moment in time, yes, 20 megapixels is currently the ceiling for our sensors at the moment, but we don't necessarily know what the next generation of sensor tech will bring So, you know, it's literally one of those cases where, you know, we'll wait and see what they come up with.
But you know, if you extend the resolution you got there on the size of the silicon, you got about an 80, megapixel sensor for full frame.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
It's another way to look at it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that's actually one of the things that we say with the full frame guys say to us actually all the time. Well, I could take a shorter focal length camera, but I have a higher resolution sensor, and I'd be able to crop in and get, you know, the same sort of reach that you can get with your system. To which then I say, oh, do you have an 80 megapixel sensor that you can crop from? Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right.
Another thing that people have wondered about, and again, I imagine the answer is you don't know. But, you know, you could get a lot better performance if you had a back illuminated sensor, right?
The thing about a back illuminated sensor in terms of the design itself, it's not just a one-way street of all advantages. There's actually a couple of headaches that come into the fray when you utilize a backside illuminated sensor. In terms of how the actual signal is accepted from the sensor itself to the processor has to actually be changed, because literally the signal is different. That comes from the sensor itself. It does bring advantages like, you know, potentially like lower noise at higher sensitivities and things like that. But sometimes that actually also compromises the actual signal itself. And so, you know, look, put it this way, we're aware of all of the technologies that exist as far as sensor tech is concerned. And, you know, it's always going to be a situation where we need to find that fine balance between image quality and potential improvements in things like sensitivity, dynamic range, all of those sorts of things. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as saying, hey, you can suddenly use a BSI sensor and then suddenly you're going to get like a sudden drastic improvement in all of your in your image performance. There's, you know, with every new sensor that or any new modification that we make to an existing sensor, we literally have to rewrite the code to decipher the signal that actually comes from the sensor itself, and you know that's a time-consuming thing. So yeah, unfortunately, yeah, my answer is literally it's a little bit more difficult than going, hey, let's use a BSI sensor.
I just have a comment on that. I've shown many times and sold a 17 by 22 print made from the E1.
Sure.
With a 5 megapixels
sensor
of a very detailed of a glacier in the Rockies.
Sure. That Kodak sensor was a lovely sensor, but
but it was 5
megapixels.
Nice. So, and this one's not. The 20 seems to be a really good one too.
Yeah, for sure.
So Quet could honestly probably give you all the information on camera history and Olympus history. So before we run out of time, I want to make sure you guys get a chance to get your hands on the E-M1x. So he is here to answer any additional questions you guys have. We have our staff here as well. So if you guys want to come up, obviously we only have 10 cameras tonight, so please share, be conscientious of the fact that not everybody's going to have one right off the gate. And just so that you guys know, if you do purchase the camera tonight, you will receive a free Olympus backpack that holds all of your gear as well. So yeah. Right there. So if you decide to purchase tonight, that's something that we will kind of throw in for your kind attendance in this snowy Friday. So just come up, grab a camera, ask us any questions you have.
For the record,
thank you.
For a Friday night, those were some excellent questions. That's probably maybe
you guys are on your.
That's some of the most detailed questions I've ever been asked at a launch event.
And if you can't answer them, none of us can, so don't try again.